that guy. Yeah.
How you doing?
Waiting. Let's get this
you
started.
You look like a real cowboy.
Yeah, I've been working like one too today.
Well, I'm sure.
It's really
I'm sure
rare for me.
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah,
you're working.
yeah. It's
I already drank a 6-pack.
I drank a 6-pack of beer.
He's used to working with these, not these.
Yeah, yeah,
Not so much.
yeah. Well, we are live, and we'll get going here in a second. Hey, did he do that
Live
video?
in color.
Yeah, where's number 3?
DJ,
What did he do?
did he do that video?
Oh, you want
The
me to
one
send
that he
it
was.
right now?
He
Oh,
said
wow.
he'll send it to you right now.
Ah, it's no big hurry. I was just curious. I know it's going to be good.
Unless you ask him, no, you won't get it. And,
I took it to Houston because I intended to send it.
hey, Carrie, come here for a minute. Tell Carrie, come here.
She's right here.
I'm going as fast as I can.
Turn those other lights on and these off. They're like bothering me.
Yeah.
Like, close that blind. It's annoying.
Dang.
Oh, yeah, much better.
Yes, that's perfect. Look, woo, spooky.
Dean's got to have his people working for him.
You look like you're in the witness protection program.
Spooky. I don't
Man.
care. That's just the light I got today.
Hello, Caleb.
Needs to be on this dark side. Look.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello, everybody.
No, turn the light back on over my head. I'll deal with it. All right, let's get.
Put your
Let's get
coasters
this-
on.
Turn every light on that you have.
And my shades.
Yeah, put your coasters on. That'd be really cool.
No.
look.
Everything open with every light on. He's so dumb for trying to turn everything off.
I heard that.
It needs light. There you go. That looks better.
There we go.
How come that light ain't working? It must be burned out.
He's not even that important, so it doesn't matter. If he's
He's very important.
That's perfect. I'm good. Just
Let's see if Caleb.
Just don't let Luna bark while this is going on.
Ah, it's all right.
Back in the day, man, we didn't have no video. I could sit here naked and it didn't matter.
And I'm sure you did.
No, we don't even know. What's
Why
up,
is it-
Caleb? What's
why
Caleb
is it-
doing?
Why is it that Caleb's the only one that ever has technical difficulties? He's got the most expensive equipment.
He's got
He's
the
a-
brightest
He
light.
brains about this shit.
Yeah.
He's got
Yeah.
the brightest light for sure,
Mhm.
man.
Yeah. I'm not even sure he can hear us.
People pay him to do this kind of stuff.
Yes.
Dang, now that's crazy.
Caleb, come on. Dean's got a deer to get. I mean, a hog to get.
Boy, ain't right. Telling you.
Nope.
Ain't nothing right about him.
Nothing right about him.
I mean, what does he do in that studio all week to change things up? Just turn it on.
I know. It's just turn it on. Look, he's pissed. You can see his face. He's
That's the same thing I was thinking when you were muted. It's the same thing you were doing last week. Come on.
I need the lighting right for my camo, so y'all can't see me with all camoed up.
I didn't see it all because you were wearing camo. You know what's funny is when I go shopping for camo, I can never find it. Ah, dad joke. Caleb.
Hey, look, can y'all see? Look,
Yeah. Is that the camera? That's all those hogs?
Target rich
That's-
environment,
Look at
man.
that one.
that
Look at that one
is
in front.
target rich environ.
And you're not going to see a single one when you get out there.
That's probably pretty close to the truth.
You just need one hand grenade.
Hey, there he is.
Hey,
He's
Was
back.
Made it.
There it is.
there.
You looked frustrated. Were you having some technical difficulties?
Yeah, I had to reset some stuff yesterday, and I guess sometimes the road this Stream Deck just wants to be disconnected and reconnected, and I never know when.
Like, you want to see something that's never seen?
What is that? That you?
That's DJ with clothes and working
And boots.
Boots.
and doing manual labor. Can't believe I got him up there.
That's how you earn your keep. All right, so
quite-
Dean's got a hog to kill. So unless you guys
I-
got something, we're gonna get started.
No, what's on the show today?
Yeah, well, it's on the email. I do want to get with y'all a little bit later, just real quick before we get started, so the live audience has this. I'm going to get with a buddy of mine. I told Dean a little bit about it. They might want to put some of our stuff on the old television, so I'll keep you guys updated on that. That'd be kind of cool. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right, here we go.
But you have a face for radio, I heard.
I've heard it multiple times. All right, here we go. Welcome into the Bite Me podcast. Going to be a fun one today. Always my favorite part of the week. I don't know if I can say the same for these other three guys. They got some great lives they're living, but always my favorite part of the week. Hope it is yours as well. If you're subscribed to the Bite Me podcast, we appreciate it. If you're not, wherever you get your podcast, you can subscribe to the Bite Me podcast. And of course, Facebook group page, 98 plus now. We're bearing down on 10,000. So we'll get there here pretty soon. If you want to join the Bite Me group page. And of course, this YouTube channel, you can join us live every Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. thereabouts. We're about 7 minutes late today, but that usually happens when we get started, everybody getting situated. But let's dig in, man. I'm John Lopez. Captain Dean Thomas is at the old ranch today. He's got some nice mounts behind him. Captain Scott doing his deal over at the Back Porch Ranch, his ranch, and Captain Caleb McCumber, who was a lot of fun to be on the boat with this past weekend with our auction winners, is at his abode near Neatville or are you technically in Neatville?
I'm in Fairchild. It's a little farming community.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, let's dig in. We're gonna talk a lot just so people can know what's coming. The trout changes here. We're gonna talk about that in detail. Artificial lure bites. That's a question we got from a listener. What you need to know if you really want a tarpon. Scott, you may want to start thinking about that now because I don't know anything. You and Dean. Desal plants. What are they? We'll get to that. And something that came up on the boat with Dean this weekend that I thought was a really good topic that we could dig into. But let's start with the week that was. We've talked about the feeding frenzy, which we have, we had last year, and we're going to have again this year. We're digging in on where exactly we want to have it. It might be a little twist, might be a little surprise for you people. Maybe even come right off the water and join us at the feeding frenzy. We'll get you details on that ASAP. But we were out on the water. On one boat was Captain Dean, Captain Scott, Mike Ashworth, and Austin, who was part of the group that was on the that bid the highest for the trip to go with us. And then on our boat was Captain Caleb, and I want to get to some of that, by the way. And of course, Justin and Michelle, who bid on that trip with us, and we had a blast. But there's always a couple stories here and there. And let's start right there. Thoughts, and I put this very vague, and I'll give mine first so you guys can get a good feel for what we're looking at here. By the way, thanks for joining us. If you are live with us, we see your comments, and we can follow up if you have anything else on what we're talking about. I put it very vague. I said thoughts and observations from the day on the water, ... with each other. And so I know we had some stuff going on both boats. There was allegations of pot licking coming from both sides. There was all kinds of stuff going on there. But I'm going to start it like just little things you pick up on. It was fun. It was a blast. It was very smooth, which was no real issues or problems anywhere that I saw. Maybe you guys can correct me on that. But I had some observations, as I'm leaving, going back to my place down there in Aransas Pass. I'm like, I was thinking that was a blast, and that was a lot of fun. But I did have some things that kind of made me laugh a little bit. The first one, and we talked about this briefly. I put a post on Facebook. Is like just last week we were talking about top water hook sets, and do this, don't do that. It can change. It can do this, and lo and behold, Captain Scott Captain Scott, the master of all, set a hook by allowing the redfish to swallow, mind you, the top water, digest it, maybe even have an after dinner mint. And it went all the way down to his lower intestine before he decided to set the hook. I mean, this was, and there's, by the way, there's a follow-up on that happened at the dock later. But Scott, man, come on. You know, you got to take
bullshit.
your own advice.
You know it.
It put a whole new meaning to tail hooked.
Dude,
Yes,
you're starting to sound like
tail-hooked.
Landry now. Man.
he tail hooked from
That
the
just-
inside out.
Like, that just goes to show that Scott's been listening to us on, you know, when that top water hits, to have to wait, to be patient.
Oh, he waited.
I'm very patient.
Oh, he definitely
Man,
waited.
John, I mean, you putting things on me like Landry puts stuff on you. That ain't right.
I know, maybe I am. Maybe I'm exaggerating just a little bit.
I
But
think
that
it was,
thing did
it
get
was
swallowed.
squirting out the it was squirting out the back end when we netted it.
Explain yourself,
Nah,
Captain
man,
Scott.
just like we talked about, redfish come up and they blow up on the top water and they take it underwater, but they don't get hooked. That's exactly what
Yeah.
he did. Blew it up, took it underwater, it disappeared. There was a big swirl, and hell, Mike Ashworth standing right next to me. He saw the whole thing. It pulled it under, so I was waiting for it to float back to the top. And usually, you know, once they do that, it floats back to the top, pops back up like a cork, like John's used to, and then you twitch it once or twice, and the redfish comes right back and eats it again. Well, it never made it back to the top, and it thumped it. I mean, like a 10-pound trout hitting a corky, man. I mean, this thing just smacked the hell out of it. About took the rod out of my hands. So I start fighting and get it in there, and I'm looking at it on the way in. I'm like, man, where's my lure at? That redfish absolutely inhaled that thing. It ate it underwater. I've never had a topwater bite underwater. That was kind of cool. It's a little different. So we tried to perform surgery on it, and there wasn't no getting it back. So
Yeah.
we even tried, you know, we were trying to come in through the gills. Just if I just said, "Down to hell with it," cut it off, and
Yeah.
we chunked that one in the cooler.
And then at the dock,
And
Captain
then,
Captain Dean had a great idea.
And as we threw it in the cooler, Dean said, "Yeah, I'll just get this one back when I clean it."
Yeah.
So we're back at the dock and we're doing our thing. I'm kind of piddling around the boat, picking trash up out of the boat and doing stuff. And Dean gets his knife out and he's over there and he fillets this thing out all nice. And he's standing there and he looks over at me. Got his fillet knife. He all skins it off, takes that head with his left hand and just tosses it right in the water. Skin flaps and head, backbone. And I watch it as it's sinking down. I said, "What were you doing?" He
He
goes,
said,
"What do you mean?"
Why did you do that?
I said, "Why'd you just do that?" And he said, "What? Do you want the head
thought
for
he wanted
something?"
the spine. I was like, what are we? We're gonna make some bone soup or something?
I said, "Well, I mean, I thought the plan was to get my lure out of his mouth."
Yeah, it
And
was.
then he just stopped and stared at me.
Oh yeah, we did plan that, didn't we?
No, I
Yeah,
didn't
the
even.
look on
when
Dean's
the
face
whole
was
thing
awesome.
happened, yeah, he looks at when he says, "Why did you do that?" I thought I threw the fillets in. I thought I threw the wrong piece in. I looked all around the table trying to figure out what I did, and then he goes,
I was just watching my lure slowly
said-
sink to the bottom.
Yeah. He said, "You were supposed to cut my lure out of there," and I was like, "Dang, I was." So we just watched $10 sink to the bottom.
Yeah, yeah.
And
just
then
the
he got
best
his
part-
cast net out and he got his cast net out and said, I'll get it. How'd that go, Dean?
Caught a
I
hard
want a
head.
cast net for it. Caught a hard head.
Tore up the
Tangled up in the net.
didn't have the lure. Didn't have the lure.
So yeah. After the net got destroyed, we're looking at about a $50 turnaround there, real
Yeah. Yeah.
quick.
Go ahead, Caleb.
he's just trying to feed his family, man. I don't know.
Oh, man.
If I learned anything, it was if you're going to be on John's boat and invariably the fishing is going to be a little bit slower, at least get on the boat with the chick with yoga pants.
Okay.
And then for some reason have Scott bitch about it when we drift beside him.
Okay. Hold on for a second. First of all, we had plenty of opportunities. I posted a video of a nice double hookup that these people, these fine friends, failed to land. So that's not on the captain. Secondly, that was my second observation, Caleb. So I'll let you have next swipe at your observations after I say this. I got to give you a lot of credit. Like I'm like hand to God, like serious credit.
Everybody listen up.
We were on the boat for what?
Doesn't
6,
happen
7
often.
hours? We were on the boat for 6 or 7 hours. For the duration of the 6 or 7 hours, Caleb was working every angle he could possibly work, from one side, from the other side, doing it in subtle ways, doing it in not so subtle ways, to get the lovely Michelle to get into her bikini, which was underneath her clothes.
I'm a
And I'll be
content
damned
creator,
if-
man. This is what we do.
and I'll be damned if it didn't work in the last hour. He was
You know,
trying everything.
About 90% of my living is made off of making content to put on the interwebs. And that's a surefire way to get put on the interwebs. All right. This is what we do.
I mean, you're not wrong. But I was like thinking to myself, Caleb, she ain't gonna do it. She ain't gonna do it. Not with us two idiots on the boat. I'll be damned. She did.
All it takes is a little bit of peer pressure and a little bit of solar persuasion.
And about 7 hours.
It didn't hurt. If I could have got her on the bandwagon as her husband, having a beer and we're putting out, it probably would have got it done a little quicker.
Hell, she brought vodka.
You're right.
She brought vodka on the boat. How about that? That's pretty strong.
And it still took 7 hours. See, y'all are freaks.
Well, John kept talking about stiff and quick, and they kept just throwing shit off, man.
Hey, my hat was perfect all day long. I don't care if I was running 35, just boom, just perfect the whole time. So it was fun. I don't know if you guys have anything. Just jump in terms of observations. Obviously, we didn't spend a lot of time. We were around you guys on the other boat a lot, but we didn't spend any time on your boat. Any observations from the rest of you guys on the great day? And by the way, we will do that again this year at the Feeding Frenzy.
And I was quite pleased with what we caught on my boat compared to the previous 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
So the days, those guys, awesome contribution to the Texas boys. They bought the trip for a really good donation, a pretty substantial amount of money. And those are the guys you really want them to catch a fish and have a good time. And I was stressing all week, man. It was tough. And then the day that it mattered, we caught a few fish. So I was pleased with the performance, but I just had a ship of fools with me that day. So the fact that
You quit talking about
caught
Austin that way.
anything with what was going on is, hey, even a blind squirrel gets the nut sometimes. And
I think Justin's observation was don't let Michelle have vodka until after the live auction.
no.
Yeah.
We're gonna sell some trips at the next one. It's vodka for everybody.
Vodka for everybody. And Justin here on the live stream says, Caleb, that's called the long game you were playing.
I've been playing it for 42 years, John.
I seriously though,
you look at this mug in front of you. I'm not a short game guy. Never have been.
Scott, I don't know if you have anything, but I was just telling myself like over and over, he's trying that again, isn't he? He's trying to do that again, isn't he?
About 10
all I
minutes
know
into, I
is-
just set my pole down and said I got a new something to fish for.
Even when the fog rolled in, I knew exactly where y'all were. I mean, it got heavy fog. I knew exactly where y'all were. All I could hear was Caleb talking and you laughing. And so it was like radar.
Pretty much.
And
Pretty
vice
much.
versa. I could tell where y'all are at because I could hear y'all fighting fish and saying that's a good one.
It was pretty good.
Oh boy.
I almost screwed up. I almost caught a fish on the first cast. I
saw the
threw out.
video.
I mean, as soon as we rolled up, I throw out there and that sucker blows up on it. I'm thinking, no, not the first cast, not the first cast. That's my one superstition of all my superstitions.
Yeah, you talked about it.
Yeah, all these fishermen's superstitions and all this stuff and the bananas and all that, I don't believe in. That first fish on the first cast, man, I hate that. So I
Mike
caught it
did
on the
put a
second
video of
cast.
this on the Facebook page for those of y'all that haven't seen it.
Yeah, there is. And by the way, that was another observation I had on our boat. Mike was on y'all's boat, and I told Caleb a couple of times, Mike sure is doing a lot of fishing. I don't know how much video he's going to be getting today. He's like, yeah, I'll go. I'll take the video. Sure you will. But no, it was a really good time. Enough action to keep everybody happy, and enough pot licking from our other guys that were there.
I don't
all
know,
right,
man.
so-
We got in, and all John kept doing was apologizing for how slow it was. And me and Dean are looking at each
Well-
other, going, man, we caught fish. I don't know what their
No,
problem was.
we had enough. We had enough action. I had higher expectations. I wanted to really, because they paid so much, I wanted to really put them on a big time bite, and it was good early, and
Shout
then
out.
it was bad, and then it was small trout at the end. But I was all about like, all right, these are great people. They have a great company in Bryan College Station, Coastal Addiction, by the way. Shout out to them. And we got the tease of a couple redfish early. I caught one. I think Caleb caught one, and they had the two double hookup, and then we kind of slowed down after that. But no, it was good. It was a lot of fun.
And you keep leaving Austin out, man. You keep talking about Justin and Michelle.
No, I said Austin
We
at
had
the start.
Austin.
Yeah, I said Austin at the start. How did he do?
He's a good dude. He's a good dude. We had a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Of course,
Well,
of course, he had to go over.
Hardcore wade guy, so he was kind of adapting his skills to boat fishing, and really amongst three other people that were kind of crowding up the areas. But yeah, those guys that like exclusively jump out of the boat and walk, and we were drifting on the troll motor and such. But yeah, Justin was a cool dude, man. Fun fishing with him.
And
One of the
Jordan
funniest bites
says-
of the day was one of the funniest bites of the day was Austin was working his top water and he got a blow up, and Dean sniped him with a soft plastic. It was
Caleb did some sniping.
he threw him
Caleb did
right
some sniping
behind it.
on your boat. He did some sniping trying to get you, and Austin's lure got in the way, and we had a midair collision. Had a midair collision on that.
Yeah, I mean, when you're hooking lures from the other boat, it's
I'm trying to put
congested.
the audio on the speakers where at least you have something to listen to, but it ain't working.
It's congested.
And Jordan says, if I wanted them to catch fish, then why did you put them on your boat? Because I'm good. And by the way, they chose the boat. Well, actually, Scott was on the other boat first, so I guess they came over to ours. All right, so on to some topics here. It's here, Scott. I'm gonna start with you, man, and then we'll get your guys' observations on this. The trout limit change is here. Here's where I want to go with it, though. Obviously, whatever observation you have on that and thoughts, but what's the impact going to be? Is it going to be apples to apples, like with redfish? Is it going to be, what's the fishery going to look like in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years? And then the ever important question of will it ever get back? Let me mute Caleb because he's talking over things. I think having some audio issues. So Caleb has been muted. But Scott, like, what's it going to look like? Is it going to be the same? Is it going to be different? What do you think?
Man, talk about the long game. I think long term, I think it'll help. Short term, who knows, man. It really helped down south when they did the emergency regulations right off the bat and right after the freeze. And they were basically real similar to what we ended up with here as a permanent fix. Their fishery has bounced back pretty damn good down there from what I'm seeing from everybody. I'm talking to Wayne, and Caleb was just down there and saw all of it. Hopefully that translates and everything picks up everywhere else. And I hate to go there, but until we get something done with the croaker stuff, I think that's the next step of improving the fishery. Although I'm kind of leaning towards maybe that this regulation with this narrow slot and 3 fish, that possibly the croaker soaking won't be near as popular. We'll see.
And that's exactly what I was thinking with in the short term, it's probably going to be, I think my first intuition is that in the short term, it's going to be the same. But those bigger trout that were going to be thrown in a cooler are going back in the water now. So it may have a quicker effect than we're thinking. You know, time will tell how that goes on. But I'm interested to see how it affects the croaker industry and the croaker guys that go out there, you know, with the intentions of getting those trout. I mean, shit, they're going to get 3 trout and they're going to be done. You know, it's going to have a good effect on it. I mean, the fact that anything over 20 inches is going back in the water is pretty damn amazing if you're trying to make a large trout fishery. Trust me, I understand there's going to be a lot of resistance. Not really resistance because you can't keep them. I mean, you got to put them back. But there's going to be a lot of bad feelings about it. But you know, so here's what's great. So when the trout limit went from 10 to 5, there were people who screamed bloody murder. Way worse than 5 to 3. Whenever it went from 10 to 5, you're going to put us out of business. I mean, it was just death threats. And immediately the results were there with better, more, bigger fish. And then after 2 or 3 years, you couldn't find one person who would say anything bad. All the people that were against it wouldn't admit that they were against it 3 years ago. They changed their tune real quick. So hopefully, you know, in 2 to 3 years, when everybody is catching some quality trout in good numbers, and catch and release kind of catches on across the board, all of those naysayers will be singing another tune.
See, Caleb, this is where
I mean, I know a bunch of people who got a bunch of people who got really upset, like Dean was talking about, and then now it's 5. Several years later, they're going, "Man, I wish we would have done that sooner."
Yeah.
And they're swearing they were for it.
Yeah, probably. So, Caleb, here's where I am with this, and I think you might fall in the same boat, so to speak. I'm looking forward to catching some really, really big trout, and I think the odds are going, you know, astronomically higher in the next 2 to 5 years.
No, God!
Yeah, it's
No, God, please, no.
you know, I like to catch a bunch and fill up the cooler, trying to feed my family and all that stuff. I'm lucky enough that I get to travel to places where it's still pretty decent, and you know, trust us, it's fun to go catch big ones. You look back in the 80s when the redfish were almost decimated, and they made changes there, and now one of the most common arguments is we need to catch more redfish, need to keep more redfish. So, like Dean said, maybe in the short game you won't see a lot of it, but in the long game, you know, hopefully it helps and picks up and gets more people back in the trout game. I would like to see a lot more trout fishermen out there.
Well, I think it gets more people in the trout game. I think you have your odds go up of catching big trout just by default. You can't keep anything over 20. And then I also think, you know, I also think that because you're only keeping 3 and guides, you know, obviously, you know, are abiding like everybody else, they buy fewer croaker. Like it's almost like it's not going to be a croaker discussion, but they're just going to buy fewer, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get off into the croaker stuff. Everybody pretty well.
I know. I'm just saying, I think just the odds are that they are, you know?
I mean, it makes sense. But at the end of the day, catch 3, throw them in the cooler if that's what you want to do. But, you know, for a successful guided trip, you caught fish, you had fun, you released fish. Either way, people's rods got bent. They had a good time. Not once last weekend when we were all fishing together did anybody count how many fish were caught. It was just, you know, did we have fun? Was the action consistent? That's what it all boils down to.
Yeah. Dean, what are you sipping on there, man? That looks like a brown liquor.
It's golden liquor. It's ranch. It's ranch juice.
Ranch juice.
Man, I'm off the clock, dude. I got a couple days off. So I'm chilling. I'm kicking it ranch lifestyle.
And we'll take another big swig there because I know you get a little looser on some of these topics they might piss off somebody.
We'll bring the croaker chokers back up again.
Oh Lord! Anybody have anything else on that? Like 2 years, 5 years, 10 years before we move on? Because I always like to dig in.
Biologically speaking, what I think we're going to see okay, all those 20-inch plus fish are protected. They're going to make more babies. Then we're going to see a group of fish coming up in that first year class that's going to be pretty big, and there's going to be a whole lot of little bitty trout caught, like what we caught the other day.
Yeah.
There's going to be a whole lot of that. The 10, 12-inch trout, they're going to be all over the place, and you're going to hear a lot of bitching about it. Oh man, all we got is little trout. Well, those little trout came from the big trout, and then as that year class grows into the next season of their life, then they get into that slot. A certain percentage is going to get taken out. A certain percentage is going to make it past 20, and now they're protected, and now they can produce more trout. So I think the population can't help but go up. I mean, that's just the way it's going to, the way I think it'll play out. But it'll be, before you start seeing a whole bunch of really big trout, it's going to be several years. And you're going to hear a lot of
on that
complain
subject,
about that.
as Scott talks about those things, we have a question that popped up on the trout mortality. If you catch a trout and you handle it quickly and put it back in the water, it is going to survive. I mean, it has a great chance. The talk about, every trout that gets released is going to be dead. Not the fact. I mean, it's just kind of a myth that has it's kind of got a life of its own somehow. You're going to have fish that get hooked deep, just like the redfish we caught the other day. But I haven't seen a red get hooked like that, one out of what, 100 maybe? Yeah. And so the fact that the majority of those trout are going back in, the mortality rate is going to be the same as it ever was. Just because they're caught and released, they're not going to die. They hear that, well, it was going to die anyway, you might as well put it in the cooler. That just doesn't make sense. I mean, if you handle them quickly, get the hook out, back in the water, we're good.
Yeah, I was having that conversation with somebody the other day, and I said, well, one sure way to make sure it doesn't survive is to throw it in a cooler.
Yeah. The odds go down.
There are all kind of studies done. The Heart Institute, the research folks, they did studies on it, and very extensive studies. They took trout, and basically some of them that were beat all to hell from tournaments and getting caught, drug around, put in a boat, put in a live well, taken to a weigh-in, released, weighed, released, and they had them in cages, and they did, it's a pretty interesting study when you read into it. And the survival rate was incredibly high, and those trout were beat up.
And so
they might catch them one.
They handled them. So they actually handled in those studies. They didn't baby those fish either. They treated them like everybody else would. They even grabbed some with a towel because there's a lot of speculation that the slime, if you affect the slime on them, that they get infected. So they took those. Yes, they dropped them in the boat. They let them flop around on the floor, and they did all of those things. And then they put them in a pen for a certain amount of time, studied them, released them, and the vast majority of those fish swam away. So yeah, the mortality rate it's not going to be any different because we're releasing trout now. It makes
the only thing I'll add to that is they did indeed hold them up with a boga grip and a monk swiping their slime off with towels and dropping them in boats and stuff. The boga grip did not kill the fish.
Yeah, no, especially the smaller ones. It's not going to. What do you think? Caleb, you got a question here, and where do you think the next state record is going to come from? Like eventually, we're going to be catching some big old trout, and that's half the fun here and half the reason we're doing this. But where do you think the next state record or thereabouts? I mean, obviously I know the state record's hard to do, but that type of fish.
Man, in my mind, there's areas with numbers of big fish, and then there's just areas that have big fish laying around them. So it's kind of hard to forecast that. There could be a 40-inch trout laying in the bottom of East Galveston Bay just as easy as there could in East Matagorda or Baffin or Mansfield or anywhere else. There's still big fish all in up and down the coast. So that's a tough one. That's a tough one to answer. Hell, let's just say East Matagorda Bay because everybody gets real excited when you say that.
When you say that. Hey, by the way, Caleb, are you sorry, Scott, but while you were talking about that, I know Dean and I down in Aransas and down even further south from us a little bit, and in Rockport, lots and lots and lots of smaller trout. I mean, you guys experienced that a little bit. They're gonna have an explosion at some point. Are you guys experiencing the same thing? I'm sure part of it is freeze, part of it is other things that have happened here, but lots and lots of smaller trout.
From what I've been hearing, it really hasn't been that way in Matagorda. If for complete honesty, I haven't been to Matagorda in probably 2 months. You know, if I sat here and told you everything that happened in Matagorda, somebody's going to call me out for being full of crap. I've been traveling with the camera crew to video and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I have been told, yes, in the areas where they're catching a bunch of trout, you're not catching a lot of big ones.
I know we are, Dean. We're catching a lot of small fish, but some better ones mixed in.
And so there's an interesting way to look at that too, as well. Where we fish between Rockport, Aransas Pass, and Port Aransas, it has a lot of pressure. There is just a lot of boats. The fact that there are that many people fishing is going to take a toll on the resource. You go, I mean, and I'd be interesting to hear from Caleb, but I know he has spent a lot of time down there. I used to fish Matagorda back in the day when it was back in the 80s and there was no pressure. There was no people. It really wasn't the way it is. Now it's basically a suburb of Houston and there's a lot of people there catching way more fish than they used to. It's kind of a product of, we live in a very touristy area here. We fish in a very touristy area. We're coming up, man. I mean, 400 boats and trailers launched at Con Brown Harbor. On Saturday, it's probably close to 600. I mean, it is amazing the amount of people that are on that water. So, I mean, it's a product of the environment. There's a lot of people catching those fish. So, places that, and so that's what's exciting about the regulations changing. You know, even though we're in a touristy area with so much pressure on the water, we're going to start producing larger fish. There's going to be the opportunity, especially for people who, you know, want to target those and drift and catch and release and throw lures. I mean, there's going to be days where you're going to be able to catch 100 trout and release those fish. So, I mean, it's a product of where you're at. So, Caleb, what about Matagorda? I mean, is there more and more people now than there ever was?
Man, the way I always explain it is whenever I started fishing Matagorda, which was early to mid 2000s, I could go out on a Wednesday and see 6 other boats and know 4 of them, and on a Saturday I could go out and see 12 boats and know 10 of them. And back and I say it all the time, I caught way more fish back before I really had any idea what I was doing. And it was that way. You could walk around one cove and come out with a wad of trout, wad of redfish, and a flounder or two. Nothing to it. 5 years ago, you could go out in East Matagorda Bay when the birds are working and catch fish till you're absolutely sick of it. That has declined in a rapid fashion as you see more and more boats, and then you add in the weather and all that kind of good stuff. So, yeah, you know, it has turned into less of a just go out and catch, and you've got a good shot at catching a good one, to more of a get kind of grindy. And if you catch a bunch of little ones, that's probably a decent day.
Yeah, Scott, Dean said something that I want you to kind of jump in on. He said we might have a day here where we can go out and catch 100 trout. Now, you, Dean, and I are old enough to have remembered those days. That's kind of where I was headed when we started this discussion. Like, it's not, even if you're not catching huge trout, which I think eventually is going to come, you're going to catch more numbers of big trout. You're going to have days just by default of being able to really, really just walk off the water. I mean, you know, walk off your boat and say, man, that was epic. You know, I think those days are coming.
It could happen. I mean, I could see it. You know, there's a lot of other issues like Dean's talked about so many times in the past: water quality, you know, habitat degradation. All those things are taking effect as well on our trout population, our fish populations overall. But leaving more in the water can only lead to more fish in the water. I mean, it's pretty damn simple math. You know? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. You know, you leave more, there's going to be more.
That makes me want to jump ahead to another part, because you talked about degradation and things that are happening to the water. But before we do that, we got a question earlier that I meant to get to. Who won the casting contest on our trip? I got to tell you, not to blow up his head too much, but oh, Caleb can chunk that sucker, man. I'm telling you,
Bye-bye.
I'm pretty good. I can chunk it out there, especially those big baits, dude. I want to see this. Maybe we can do it at the feeding frenzy. You know what? I'm gonna set up a trash can or a big field, and you three guys, if you want to, Scott. But I know Dean keeps saying me. So maybe we can set up.
Caleb was fishing in front of our boat. From his
He
boat.
was.
That's what I kept telling John. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna check over there in front of them.
He's like, let's see what they're doing over there. But no, Kay, I got to tell you, man, you go good. I'm not good at the distances. I would say 80, 90 yards.
I just send it.
Yeah. Dean, can you chunk it 90 yards?
100.
I feel like Scott is not going to enter this fray.
I'm not gonna get into the overestimating my cast.
Overcompensating.
It didn't take
Caleb-
John. It didn't take.
Hey,
Caleb.
all I know
throwing
is
that,
I cast
Caleb
far
was
enough to catch a
throwing
bunch
that,
of fish.
Well,
Go ahead, Dean.
Caleb was throwing that 3-ounce bullet. So
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
it didn't take Scott long to figure out what I was up to, and he started casting away from me all afternoon.
oh no, we were casting at your lure because we were going to cut it off, and yeah,
Keep
that
it.
was going to be the end of that. We just
I don't-
never got the hook up.
I keep about 85 yards on my spool, and if I rear back and send it, I can make myself nervous that if something hits it at the end, it might take it off of me. So I don't know how far that is.
I got to tell you, it was very impressive.
But whenever I show up with a 10-foot medium heavy, and a super spook to the casting contest, don't be alarmed.
No, here's what I'm going to do. We're having a team meeting here right live on YouTube and on this podcast. I'm going to bring 3 lures identical, and you guys bring your rods. They all have to be same size, 6.5, 7 feet, whatever. And then let's go. Let's go. I'll bring the lures. I'll bring all 3.
Is this spinning rods or bait casters?
Whatever you want. You can bring any rod that you cast in the bay.
Hey,
But I'm bringing the lures. I'm bringing the lures.
Yeah, he's going to show up with a spinning rod with 5-pound line on it.
Exactly.
Well, that's up to you.
Hey man,
No, that's up to you.
I'm just working. I just want to know what the parameters are so I can work within them.
I'm gonna
But
go
we're not
find.
going to have any.
I'm gonna go find
Go
one
ahead.
of those beach YouTubers and learn that little spinny figure 8 whoosh thing.
Yeah. Y'all are gonna get throwing your casting contest and start chunking those lures. I'm gonna get the exact same lure, and I'm gonna put it in one of those bait launchers they use on the surf.
Show with a potato cannon.
That's my rod. Yeah, that thing. Okay, so let's jump ahead because Scott mentioned this, and this is a question that we've had on the rundown for I want to say 3 or 4 weeks. Never got to, and we're going to get into some other fishing stuff here in a second. But it's a question from a listener that wants to know what a desal plant is and how it affects fishing. Quote: do you know if there are any impact studies to the effects of a desalination, by the way, plant in the area and what it would mean for our bays and fishing? I know the plants have been in talks for a while, but I haven't heard anything on the impacts. I specifically mean in our area and not systems elsewhere. Now, Dean, I'm going to start with you here because I know that's something that's going on right now down there.
And so what area did that question come from? Because yes, it is in the conversation every day in my area. It's on the news. There's permits, there's proposals. The Port of Corpus Christi is booming. And do you know where that question came from?
I do not. You just said that and I didn't get any
Okay. And there aren't, so there's only, I think in the United States, there's only 2 desal plants. One's in California, one's in Florida. They're over in Saudi Arabia and they're over in that part of the world. Huge mega desal plants. So I don't know about if there's actually been environmental studies. There's nothing to compare it to here. There's certainly nothing to compare it to in the Gulf of Mexico. But what it does do is it sucks in hundreds of millions of gallons of water per day. And the way the thing works is it turns it into steam. And the steam that comes off the salt water is the fresh water that's used. And then what's left over, the brine, the concentrated salt goes back in the bay. The people that I've talked to that are familiar with the process. There was a lot of conversation in the beginning that they're putting all this salt back in the water and this concentrated stuff. Well, the salt that they're putting back in the water was there in the first place. So that's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is that whenever it draws in hundreds of millions of gallons of water, it brings in the larvae. Every single little tiny creature that goes into that intake, it comes out sterile on the other end. Nothing survives the process. Whether there are filters, whether there are ways to, I mean, I don't know. That there's many questions to be answered on the environmental impacts of that. Corpus Christi, around the Harbor Island area, around the inner port area, there are 5 or 6 permits that have been applied for. There is the city council in Corpus Christi actually approved like a test plant that they were going to build. And it was a ridiculous amount of money. It was like $700 million just for the experiment.
Jeez.
So the citizens of Corpus Christi are quite upset right now about the money that's being spent on an experiment to find out if it's feasible. And right now, I mean, there's bonds, there's assistance in paying for that, but it is still falling a huge price on the citizens of Corpus Christi. And it is the future. There is much to be decided about that. There's a lot of places for people to voice their opinion, to send letters and comment on that. But
what's your opinion on it, though? Because like Caleb and I hate to speak for you, but I don't think you and I have a lot to add to this. I know Scott might, but like, what's your opinion? Do you?
I'm not in. Of course, I'm opposed to it. I mean, I hate to see whatever's going to happen to the detrimental effects to the bay and the bay systems of sucking all of these larvae and all these things into it. But we live in a very arid part of Texas. We live on the edge of the desert. There is no water. The lakes are constantly below 30%. We're under water restrictions right now. So the argument for it is tough to beat. I mean, there's a lot of people that, I mean, you can't, there's no counterpoint. It's like, yeah, we got no water. We got more people and we get less and less water every day. So it is inevitable that it's going to happen in the future. Where they actually put the intake is a big question. You know, there's options of putting the intake way offshore, to put a pipe several miles offshore and draw it in from the Gulf, opposed to drawing it from the bay. And then where they put the discharge, but then it becomes very, very expensive for those options. And there's arguments every day. And I'll link up some of the stuff on the Facebook page. I mean, I get the emails. We have groups here that are local that stay up to date on the current permitting issues and such as that. So I'll try to link it up and help people gather a little more knowledge on that.
Yeah, I'm completely ignorant on it, but Scott, I'm gonna let you jump in. It looks like Caleb actually has an opinion on this as well, but Scott, jump in if you have anything to add, another level here.
I really haven't gotten up to speed on them a whole lot. I just know, plants require a lot of water. We got another situation going on here, in Port Lavaca, Port O'Connor with our plant over here wanting to expand, and they're going to build a new lake and take water out of the Lavaca River. And we don't have that much freshwater inflow into our bays. And that's been a big problem with the rebuilding of marshes and the degradation of the habitat is, our bay systems are set up, they're estuaries, and they require some fresh water to come into them. And a whole lot of the smaller fish, the larvae and all that, they require some fresh water. They don't do well in high salinities. And I don't know. I think our bays are just going to start getting more and more, higher salinity, because we're pulling all the water, siphoning it off before it ever gets a chance to get there.
I'm really glad that Scott and Dean said what they said and described it pretty well. How I would have, being as how whenever I read the rundown, I thought that you had spelled tractor fuel plants incorrectly.
I told you and I didn't have anything to add. I wasn't even going to pretend.
Desal, didn't they use that in Vietnam?
Yeah, no, I think that was something else.
I mean,
think-
one way to look at it too, a whole lot of that over in the Middle East, Dubai and all that, they're doing a lot of the desal work over there, and be
Mhm.
interesting to see what their results are.
Mhm.
But it would also be very hard to get true results from over there, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I think that the government over there might skew things just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Caleb and I were thinking about napalm plants.
Yeah,
from Vietnam.
napalm trees.
Caleb's
old
like, I'm all
napalm.
for more diesel plants.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
will it bring the
napalm
prices
bad
down?
for the bay? Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think napalm is not a good thing for trout fishing. I'm pretty sure it is, especially if you're on the boat when they drop it. That could sting a little bit. You may need some sunblock. Speaking of Vietnam, by the way, I do want to kind of do a little shout out and a request from everybody listening to this podcast, everybody on the group page, about the Carry the Load event on Memorial Day. I'm on Camille Knoll's team, Scott's better half, and I'm asking that everybody. I actually sent an email to the people over at my radio station, and hopefully we're going to have some involvement there. But it's at 7 a.m. The walk. Make sure you go to the East Coast Relay. I think it's what it's called, and join the team. I'll be there. My whole family's going to be walking. It's just about 3 miles, and you can see the link. I put one on the group page this morning, and it's a really good deal. I'm trying to really quadruple our attendance from last year. So I'm actually glad you brought up napalm and Vietnam, Caleb.
You're welcome.
Something else on that. Our boy John Parkoff sent a whole
Mhm.
bunch of those little lure trays, or taco trays, as Dean likes to call them. But he sent a whole bunch of them, big box full of them, over here to the house. Just came in today, and he wants Camille to use those as fundraiser for the walk. And
nice.
so I don't remember how many that were in there. I kind of glanced at it a while ago. It looked like, I don't know, 15 or 20.
Mhm.
Something like that are in there. So we're working on something, make a donation, get a
Yeah.
bite me lure tray, taco tray,
Pretty sweet.
whatever it is.
They're pretty dang sweet. All right, Caleb, we'll start with you on this one. Another question from our listener, one of our listeners here, wants an explanation of the artificial lure bites and why they can be different. And here's the question itself. I'm having a hard time picking up this bite throwing artificials. Oh, by the way, he's new to artificials. He listens to the podcast and said, you know what, I'm gonna go all in, which I love that, and try to start throwing artificials more, less bait, all that stuff. So he said, I'm having a hard time picking up this bite throwing artificials. I'm trying to use artificial more than live bait these days, but I'm having difficulty learning when I'm just hitting some grass, bottom, and versus when I'm getting a bite, and the bites are different, which we've experienced in the last month or so. You always talk about a thump, but maybe you can get into some of the detail on feeling a bite using artificial. I'm just going to toss it to you because I've got some thoughts, but I'd rather let you tell them.
Well, after watching John fish, the secret is you just set the hook every dang time.
It doesn't cost you a nickel.
Hook sets are free, and sometimes it pulls back.
Doesn't cost you one nickel.
To be clear, the thump is like the best part of the roller coaster. They're not all of them are thumps. Sometimes the tick, sometimes it gets heavy, sometimes it's a little whack. But you'll learn to tell the difference. If you're not already, I would really suggest using braid and a good rod. You can tell a lot of differences with that. It's a lot more sensitive. But yeah, man, the thing is, you're ahead of the game though. If you can feel it on grass or something, then you're going to be able to feel the bites when they're lighter.
Mhm.
But it's repetition and just doing it over and over and over. And I don't set the hook when I feel grass, but I promise you I reel down, and that next twitch is just a little bit harder just to make sure it wasn't a fish. So if you're feeling all the little things, then I think you're well on the track to becoming an artificial aficionado.
I did almost take your eye out once.
You did. The gel coat on the side of your boat's probably a little beat up over there too.
It always is. Doesn't cost me a nickel. So
actually, I think
go ahead.
Caleb just coined a new word: artificionado.
Artificionado.
Put that
I
in the
like
Bible
that.
dictionary.
We're gonna put that on a T-shirt, but it has to be a XXL.
Yeah, Dean, what I would have told him is just something different. When something different happens at the end of your line, and it's not the drag of oyster shell, which you can kind of get used to, or grass, which you can kind of feel just kind of a heavier weight, but it either picks it up, it moves it. What Caleb was talking about, but it's
Well,
really just trial and error.
It's that second pulse that you
Mhm.
get. I mean, of course, where we're at, you set the hook on every blade of grass that hits the hook, but
That's what I told
you learn to resist the urge.
Fair.
I mean, the more you do it, you get the feeling when it is grass and when it's actually a fish. But when it takes the grass or it ticks something, you give it that tug, and then it's going to be the second pulse that gets it whenever
Mhm.
the rod goes down a little bit. So, I mean, it practice makes perfect. It is a skill that you have to you have something to compare it to is the best way to explain that.
And the other thing, Scott, about this is just more time on the water, more time throwing artificials. And you've said this numerous times, which I wanted to get your thought on it. Throw it when you know there's fish there, right? And then you can kind of get a better sense and kind of get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a bait fisherman and you're catching some fish and you want to transition to being an artificial guy, that's the best time. You've been catching your fish on some bait. You're in a good spot. You got some feeding fish. Then pull out the artificial and start trying it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're still in that mode of I can't figure this out, I can tell you from being on the platform and watching. I watch the lure and I watch the fish, and I see the two connect all the time. And I cannot tell you how often it was probably, I don't know, it's probably at least 75, 80% of the time I see the bite, the lure is missing. It's gone. It's in their mouth, and the angler still hasn't felt it. And I'm telling them, he ate it, and then they feel it. So I don't. It's one of those weird things of you see it happen over and over and over again, and I'm watching the rod and I'm watching them, I'm watching the fish, and the rod doesn't react all the time, and I'll see the fish eat it. I know he's got it in his mouth, but there's always this little delay, and it's transmitting up the line as soon as it happens. I mean, you've got a direct connection, but there's something in there. I think sometimes we don't feel it until they've got it almost to their crushers. That initial, when they suck it in, that's that little, we all talk about a subtle bite. I think that's the subtle bite is when they suck it in. And then when they turn is when people feel it.
What kind of bite would you describe watching it get whitewatered, go underwater, and then for the people that aren't watching, I'm making air bunny ears here, hits the top water like a train underwater.
I was thinking the same thing, but I was just going to let it slide. But the conclusion to that is there's variety in those. I mean, you can't say that this is how they're eating today. Yeah, some days, man, that redfish will come from 10 feet away. Man, you see the weight coming, boom. And then some days you throw it on their nose and they just kind of boop, pick it up. And then some days they inhale it to their gullet, and then you still don't set the hook under the water.
It's the only way in the world to catch a redfish and somehow have Dean still catch a hardhead. And that's what we call the long game.
The long game. I'll tell you what, Scott. Caleb was on my boat, and he saw you. He saw that fish eat your top water, and he says, "Oh, I know it's in his mouth." And then he said, "I know it's in his throat."
Why didn't he set the hook yet? Why is he not setting the hook?
I know it's in his lower intestine. I know it's.
There was absolutely zero pressure on the rod. I mean, I did what I always do. As soon as it sucked it like that and it went underwater, I started pulling back with the rod, and there's no pressure.
Jump in here.
I
got it because I saw the whole thing. I had a front row. I had a front row seat to the melee that ensued. When that fish hit, and when I talk about the variety of way things hit, that fish hit, and when Scott set the hook, the fish was probably 20 feet from where the explosion was. So it brought it kind of at an angle to the boat, and you just can't feel that fish. in Scott's defense, which I'm morally opposed to coming to Scott's defense on most occasions, but that fish came to us. And so whenever he set the hook, I mean, so he was fishing off the front of the boat and hooked the fish very much in front of us. And then when the thing came tight, it was at the back of the boat. So the fish made a run in an odd direction, and that's in Scott's defense.
Okay,
I'm
well,
sorry,
so
sorry, Caleb. I
from our-
apologize.
from our boat, we saw the fish blow up, and I'm sitting there like, why didn't you send the hook? Why didn't you send the hook? And then I moved right around to reminding Michelle how hot it was and what good content we could get with the chick in a bikini. And then we cast the idea of the content. And then I turned around and I see Scott reel down and set the hook. That was the timeline on our boat.
Yeah.
The thing is, I know Scott's right. It's just more fun this way.
And so, actually, as we were sitting there, I ate a taco before he set the hook. I mean, I unwrapped it.
Right out of Parkoff's taco tray.
Blew up. I picked the taco out of my
What I want to
bite
know
meat
is
tray from the tray off.
what
the
I want to know is
dash.
why were y'all all watching me fish? Trying to learn
So
something?
we were already hooked up. We were,
We were wondering if John was going to
We
hit
had
you on
already
the boat
limited
trolling up
out.
to it.
yeah. I was like, look, you just caught a fish. Let's go over there. Let's go.
Hey, I'm fishing one day and I've got a guy in the front of the boat and he flips out under a dock and we're trying to catch a flounder for a tournament. He flips under a dock and I flip out and I catch a trout and I'm fishing out of the back of the boat and the boat is pointing to the dock. I could not be any further away from the dock. And so I catch the trout and I get it in, I take it off. I'm bent over in the water washing my hands and I see a flounder swim by me and I'm looking at this flounder. I was like, damn, there's a flounder right there. And then I look a little bit harder. I was like, there is a fishing line hanging out of its mouth. And I looked at the front of the boat and my dude just standing there just twitching. And I was like, dude, set the hook. And he looks at me like I've lost my damn mind. And I start yelling at him, reel down and set the hook. And he reels down and sets the hook. And the flounder that had ate the lure 30 yards in front of the boat swam past me and the motor on the back of the boat without dude on the front ever having any clue it happened.
So who got credit for the fish?
Yeah.
He caught the fish, but that was about 7 years ago, and I ain't stopped talking about it yet.
Something else that was crazy. Y'all didn't see it, but Ashworth was standing next to me when I did it. I caught one of those little dink trout, at the end there when we were catching a bunch of those little small ones. I caught this little dink trout and I had my rod up underneath my elbow, under my armpit. And so my lure was kind of hanging down in the water and I took that little trout and I threw it back in the water. He hit the water. This will tell you about catch and release. He hit the water and spun around and took a shot at the lure.
Again.
The released fish. Yeah,
That is one
the
dumb
released
fish.
fish.
That is one dumb fish.
Mike and I both looked at him and said, man, as soon as he hits 15, he's done.
Yeah.
when that
See,
fish
John,
gets legal length, it's over.
That's the one John's going to catch.
Yeah,
found
yeah,
it.
exactly. You were telling him, take a good look at that ice chest, buddy, because you're going to see it again. You're going to see that.
I could not believe
gonna see
Mike
that.
Mike stopped. He looked at me and said, did you see that? I said, yeah, just couldn't believe it either.
Oh man, this is too good. But unfortunately, we're not going to get to your tarpon topic yet. Scott, I keep kicking it down the road because we're not in season yet anyway.
Yeah, it ain't,
And a real
it
good
ain't
question.
tarpon season yet.
Yeah, it ain't tarpon season, so I'm kicking it down the road and where to fish when wind direction changes. We'll get to that one next week as well. But I know we've got to get to what would Scott do, what would Caleb do, what would Dean do, and just kind of pulling the curtain back. One of the things I love about these guys is being able to add some levels to each topic. So there's always going to be some extra. They don't just all say the same thing. And so keep sending your questions and we'll keep answering them and we'll always get to them. In fact, I got a question right here as I was sitting here for maybe next week's podcast from one of our listeners. But it's Easter weekend. I don't think that's quite, correct me if I'm wrong, Dean, but I don't think that's quite as busy a holiday because it's more of a family holiday.
Yeah, that's a family oriented one. But I'm fishing this weekend. I mean, I'm here at the ranch for a couple of days, but I'm fishing Friday, Saturday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So, I mean,
You better
when
get
I'm
them
in
drift,
town,
get
Yeah.
them drift socks.
and we got to get through April before we get to tarpon fishing and kingfish and jacks and stuff like that. So April, yeah. I was looking at the forecast. I mean, we got the first week of April. It looks like what you expect in April. A lot of south wind, changing directions. It's kind of cool-ish this morning, but hot in the afternoon. But I mean, tide is up. The one thing that we have in my neighborhood that I love in the windy season is a really high tide, because we get back in the corners, we get back in the bushes. You have a lot more flats to explore, and we have a lot of wide open flats, so the wind can be savage on us. But during the one thing that bails you out on that is a really high tide. It lets you get into a few spots that aren't as savage as others. And we've been pinned down. I mean, so you've been down there fishing, we've been fishing, we've been pinned on the deeper flats. The tide has not come in to let us get out of certain areas that I kind of feel like I've been stuck lately. I'm ready for a change of pace. I'm ready for some more water and bring on the wind if it has to be that way. But that big south wind pushes water onto the flats. It brings the water in. So, but we're past the cold fronts. The water's good. The temperature's good. Topwater bite. I mean, we caught all our fish on topwaters with the guys for our little feeding frenzy thing. And it's April is where things really start to shift gears. But there's going to be a few challenges before it really shifts gears.
And Scott, I cannot tell you. I thought you hated April. I got Dean on a tangent about April when we were fishing. and Friday is one of the biggest reasons why, Scott. I'm looking at 25 to 35 on Friday, and windy Saturday and Sunday. But you could probably get somewhere, maybe Sunday morning.
Somewhere.
You can get somewhere. You can go to the ranch. But what are you looking at, buddy?
Water's coming up, like Dean said, and our tide's running about a foot above what it's supposed to right now, even with the northwest wind. Northwest knocked it down a little bit. It was blowing like hell last night and this morning. So it knocked it down some, but it's still higher than predicted. And that's going to be a trend probably all the way through the weekend. That super strong southeast wind on Friday is going to push that water way up. So I would start venturing further and further back into the back lakes. If I had to guess, the Pringle, Conti, all that type of stuff around here is going to turn on with the higher water and everything getting back to normal as far as the tide levels go. So with the wind, it's kind of nice to be able to get back into those little back pockets and little small lakes. I like the little unnamed ones. Everybody goes to Pringle, Conti, Fifth, and all the named lakes, but I go to the little satellites off of them, and the fish will push way the hell back in there when this water gets up like this.
That's your language, Caleb, getting back in some of those places that aren't on the map.
Yeah, what the guy said. Tides are coming up. Get up on the flats that I'm gonna get to, get in some back lakes, check it out. Send me any kind of information you have, because I'm interested. I don't get to fish this weekend. It's like Dean said, family weekend, and I like my family, so I'm gonna go do that. But yeah, no, it could be rewarding getting into some of those little lakes and back corners of the bays.
Well, all right, everybody, have a happy Easter, and maybe you'll eat some fish on Good Friday. That's our tradition, and have a great week. After that, we are going to be back with you on Tuesday, and we do have a lot of stuff percolating for our listeners. Man, we're planning on a little feeding frenzy discussion. We're planning on maybe some stuff that's going to be on mainstream TV occasionally. We're working on that. So appreciate everybody hanging in and subscribing to the YouTube channel, and certainly most important, I always say, is subscribing to the podcast itself, wherever you get your podcast. Before we get out of here, Scott,
I could have had fish on Good Friday. I had the redfish that we kept. Dean cleaned, and not only did I lose a lure out of that, I lost the fillets. He didn't even give me the damn fillets. Yeah, he didn't even give me the fillets off of it. I didn't think about it until I was about halfway back home. I was like, damn.
Yeah, check the cooler, man.
I lost a lure and the fillets.
If it makes you feel better, I brought them with me to the ranch, so I'm going.
All right, good. They're going to a good cause.
Yeah, that makes me feel all better.
They're going to a good cause.
Yeah, exactly.
Feed my family.
Yeah, yeah, you got to feed
Uh-huh.
your family. You got to feed your family. All right, boys, appreciate it, man. That was a lot of fun, and we're gonna have we already have topics for next week. Y'all have a great holiday, and if you do get out there, be safe. It's gonna be real, real windy. Catch them up, and we will talk to you guys next time.
Yeah, Dean, you're gonna have to have 4 bags.